First of all, I want to thank every person standing with us today. I want to say this is deeply personal for me. I am a woman of color. I am a mother of 4 black children, 2 of whom are young black men, Ajalon and Sean. I am the grandmother of 3 black boys, Barack, Theodore, and King James. And they have the right to live in peace and not fear. I am a black educator. I am a black psychotherapist. I work with disabled veterans on a daily basis. I hear their stories. I know their pain because I am one of them. I am a black female disabled veteran. My family and I sacrificed so that all of us have the right to stand here and protest peacefully. I took an oath to protect and serve, just like the police officer that murdered George Floyd. Every community resident should be able to live, work, and travel confident in an expectation that interactions with police officers will be fair and consistent with constitutional norms and guided by public safety, free from bias or discrimination. Unfortunately, our communities of color are not confident in these expectations. People of color are being treated like un-Americans, like we are not lawful citizens. This has been so for over 400 years and is still in play in 2020. Therefore, we are calling for and demanding policing reforms to ensure unjustified and excessive force is stopped, and law enforcement officers police officers who do choose to break the law are held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Our communities of color also need to understand we shouldn't have to elude police and live in fear of them. We should be able to engage them. Our community of color needs to understand that police officers are community servants, which means their main duty is to provide service to the public in the form of protection. Not only certain people in the community, but all people in the community, regardless of their race, religion, or sexuality. We are all tax-paying citizens of this community, of this country. So please understand, the police officers work for us. It is an employer-employee relationship. Please understand this. Due to long-standing fear and intimidation tactics employed by police officers all over this country, the employer-employee relationship with police officers hasn't been translated to our communities. So now that you know police officers are public servants, will you continue to live in fear of them? Or will you start putting pen to paper and hold them accountable for their egregious behaviors? What is your employer-employee relationship like at work? If you beat your employer and inflict excessive bodily harm on him or her, would they hold you accountable? Would you be fired? The answer is yes, to the fullest extent of the law. It's time for you to understand your position and the power each and every one of you hold. Most importantly, people of color need to understand the extreme importance of legislation and our elected officials' roles in the legislation that is ultimately made into law. This is why it's important to vote, especially on the local level, to ensure that the people in elected offices who are deciding our fates, that often have deadly consequences for people of color, look like us, understand us, live in our communities, and in the words of my pastor, do life with us, are at the table on our behalves. One law that needs to be repealed now, is Graham versus Connor, which is an excessive force case arising from the detention and release of a suspicious person by a City of Charlotte police officer. Graham versus Connor ruled on how police officers should approach investigatory stops and the use of force during an arrest. In the 1989 case, the Supreme Court ruled that excessive use of force claims must be evaluated under the objectively reasonable statute and standard of the Fourth Amendment. Let me ask you, do you know what the Fourth Amendment says and why it's so important to you? Arguably, it can be said that Graham versus Connor dismisses the rights of the subject being detained, and when police officers engage in excessive force, the Supreme Court's rationale and guidance from the civil case cannot be applied to a criminal analysis of the police officer's use of force, ultimately allowing all of the not guilty verdicts of police officers that beat, maim, and kill people of color. Ask your legislators, how can a reasonable use of force under the Fourth Amendment violate a state criminal statute? I encourage all of you to research this law and contact your legislators and demand new legislation be introduced that will ensure the rights of law-abiding people of color to have the right and liberty to move around unrestricted, free of fear and terror. Yes.